This is Shutters Inc. with Bruce Williams.
Hi, and welcome to episode 493 of Shutters Inc., the final episode for 2020, the year we thought would never end. This is Bruce Williams from shuttersincpodcast.com, and joining me once again from Allentown in Pennsylvania, Mr. Joe Edelman. How are you?
Hello, Bruce. How are you doing?
Mate, I am great. I honestly slept for about 10 hours last night, and that is double what I normally get, so I'm stoked.
I am seriously jealous. I got to tell you, I'm also jealous that you guys are done for the holidays. Like, I'm gonna have to move to Australia if I get to have that much time off. Wow. Yeah.
We normally take a break on the podcast for about a month from Christmas through to Australia Day almost, which is the 26th of January.
That sounds like a Glenn kind of thing there to me. I don't know.
It does.
Okay.
Yeah. So how has your week been?
It's been pretty much like every other week this year. Nothing terribly exciting. I'm still hanging in there,
Good to hear.
Here in the U.S., we're kind of living in an alternative universe right now anyway. So, I'm still kicking. That's good.
I was thinking last night, is it just me, or does the period between November 4 and January 20 feels like another 4 years?
Unfortunately it does. And I have to tell you, our illustrious president is doing his darndest to make it feel like another 4 years.
It certainly is.
I would suggest that he is going well out of his way to try and accomplish that.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Yep. Anyway, so I thought this episode, we should just look back over what has obviously been the most unique of years in living memory, but from a photographic angle, and just I wanted to know what you've been up to over the whole of this year, and what have been the highlights, what have been the low points.
Okay. You didn't tell me this was going to be like a sob story, sad kind of week, Bruce. Come on.
Well, have there been any high points?
Yeah. I mean, there's always high points. So gosh, here, my year. Let me see if I can condense my year down. My year started out looking like it was going to be a truly amazing year. So I had a ton of speaking engagements booked, like literally throughout the whole year.
Yep.
For the first 2 months of the year, I was on a speaking tour with Olympus. Olympus had just released the OMD EM1 Mark III, and I was literally crisscrossing the country, doing like 2 and 3 and 4 stops a week at different photo retailers, and we were doing these launch events to show off the camera. And I was a speaker at Imaging USA, which is the event that's held by the Professional Photographers of America. I was a speaker at WPPI in Las Vegas. My last trip was down to Southern Florida in the very first week of March. The very beginning of March, I was the keynote speaker at the Southwest Florida Camera Club Council event. And I knew when I flew home from that event, it was a Sunday evening, I knew going through the airport in Fort Myers, Florida, the world was changing. And that's when it really hit me, because I had been following the news. I'd been following the news since January that this thing was going on. And by that time, we already had reporting of some cases, starting to happen in the west coast of the U.S. But the airport in Fort Myers, it was just different.
Right.
People were really just very skitsy. And we weren't into mask wearing yet or any of that kind of stuff yet. Nobody was talking about masks yet. This was right at the cusp.
Were people socially distancing by then?
People were. I mean, no, I don't want to say that they were doing it like, hey, we need to be paying attention, but it was very clear people were very tentative about other people. And the airport, Fort Myers Airport is a fairly small airport. It was packed. It was almost kind of like people getting out of Dodge, because that week that was the beginning of what would be the college spring break. So you would expect a lot of traffic coming into the airport.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of traffic going out of the airport, which it was really odd. And I came back, and then, within a couple of days, we were talking about, oh, this is going to get bad. And then within a week and a half, we went into our kind of 2-week, national lockdown. And my entire calendar got wiped out, just wiped out.
Wow.
So I kind of sat there for a week or so, like, what in the world am I going to do?
Yeah.
I can't really go into a studio. And at the time, I was leasing a studio that I had been in for less than a year.
Yeah.
In a kind of an artist community type setup. It was awesome setup.
Yeah, it was a great space. I remember seeing the photos.
Yeah, so I couldn't use that. I couldn't do shoots. All my speaking engagements were gone. And fortunately, I've always kind of had a bit of an entrepreneurial mentality. So I thought, well, maybe there's an opportunity to teach online. And so I spent about another week looking at my options. I mean, Zoom was kind of an obvious one. I looked at webinar platforms. I don't know if you've ever taken any webinars at all, photography or otherwise. I've done a lot of marketing webinars.
Yeah.
And they're horrible. They're just painful. You sit there and you're watching a computer screen and you're eager to learn, but the person who's giving the presentation, they're staring down at a laptop camera, which of course is low quality. Yeah. And, you're listening to ums and ahs, and it's like, okay, so let me share my screen with you. And then 5 minutes later, they're like, oh, that was the wrong button. Oh gosh, I'm so sorry. I thought I had this all prepared. And it's just like, oh, this is so painful. So I thought, I can't do that. I can't agree to put people through that. So I really started working with the idea of how can I put together a presentation that is going to be as close to the in-person experience as possible, but it's going to happen on a computer screen. And, a little bit of trial and error. I use webinar platforms, and I've got it down now. I can actually do them with Zooms too, because a lot of camera clubs, they use Zoom. But I've developed, I guess I'm at 16 or 17 different presentations now. Wow. That are designed to do, to be presented online. I am able to teach lighting and portrait lighting. I use a piece of software that comes out of Germany called Set-A-Light 3D, which is just incredible.
Oh, is that the thing that does the layouts of where you've set up lights and where your camera is and where your model is? And
except it's all 3D and it's virtual, so you can walk through it, spin it around, look at it from above, below, in between. Oh, it's amazing. And so I'm able to, actually not just show, hey, you can put a light here, but it gives a real-time rendering of whatever you do with the light. And I can say, well, if I move the light 6 inches to the left, look at how the shadow on the nose changes, and you see that shadow. Nice. And this software is so accurate that I can basically get my proper exposure in the software using my shutter speed, apertures, etc., setting the lights to the power they are. And then if I were to take that diagram that I've created and then go into my studio, set my lights at the same distance, same power, same height, same camera settings, take a test shot, it's perfectly exposed.
Wow.
So it's not just kind of an illustrative thing. It is a legit, rendering of what really happens. You can work with color temperature and color balance, gels, you name it. It's incredible.
That is very
cool. So that has really helped me to, be able to create a good, a really, really good experience. And so for each of the different classes that I do that involve studio work, I have, several what they refer to as sets put together, so I can go from one kind of lighting to another, and really walk people through the whole thing and show it to them kind of in real time, but also from way more angles than I could possibly do with cameras set up, and people watching me in a studio. So that has really kind of been my lifesaver, because I started doing those online presentations and marketing them through my website, social media, and have gotten great turnouts. And then continuing with the entrepreneurial spirit, I started basically digging through the internet and looking for contact information for any and every camera club and photo organization that I could find, and have sent out emails and introductions to people. And so At this point, I'm doing anywhere from usually a light week is about 4 presentations, but as many as 8 or 10 presentations a week now.
Wow.
And I'm able to do them in places that I would normally never get to do them. Because, for instance, a camera club that might be in California, I'm on the East Coast. So a camera club in California can't afford to fly me to California and then pay me to do a presentation.
Yeah.
But when you take all the travel expenses out of the equation, they can afford to have do a presentation remotely. I've done some presentations in the UK, in Canada. Haven't gotten any invites from Australia yet, but we'll see. So that honestly, that's kind of been how I've been surviving. It evolved into this. Okay, you call yourself a photo educator. Let's get really better at educating. And so I do have a wife who is a cognitive psychologist and a college professor. She is really good at bouncing ideas off of and helping me with things. And even the little thing I told you about last week, the presentation I did for Olympus, where I didn't show any pictures.
Oh, yeah.
I've really been trying to teach myself, as part of my presentation, slow down, tell more stories, try to make it more audibly engaging because it really pulls people in. So that's been a big part of it. And then photography-wise, I just still try to pick up my camera every day, take a picture of my dogs, take a picture of a rock, and that's something I think I will always do no matter what my career may be. I'm just, even when I don't have my gear with me, I'm taking pictures with my iPhone just because, something looks interesting.
Yep.
Hardly ever do anything with them, but it's there. So it's
you've just given me the perfect bridge to something I wanted to bring up later in the podcast. But cool. Over this last week, you may not be familiar with this, but our listeners already are. About 14 months ago, I gained employment with a recording studio in North Sydney, and 99% of what we do is record and edit audiobooks. And over this last week, I've been recording the memoir of a girl who created a business out of her kitchen back in sort of around about 2004, and built what ended up becoming a multi-million-dollar worldwide business, and she has just closed that business down in 2019. And she was reading her own memoir, so I was, working with her over this last week, and she had one particular comment that just really stuck in my mind, and she said, being creative is not something we choose to do, it's something we have to do. And I thought, for anyone who's creative, it really is like that. I feel like if I'm not being creative in some fashion, I feel like I'm wasting my time, or like I'm wasting my life away.
Sure.
I don't know. Do you feel that way?
I do, absolutely. And I think it's I've observed variations on that with different people. I mean, for me, I have taught a few college courses here in the U.S. about creativity.
Right.
Which were a lot of fun. The idea that they would let me loose on a room full of, 19 to 20-year-olds. And, wow, here we go. Okay. But I always give them an alternative definition of creativity. Because even though the dictionary, when you look up creativity, doesn't say anything about art specifically.
Right.
We tend to associate creativity with being artistic. And it's a horrible association, because what it does is it actually eliminates a lot of people and forces a lot of people to feel, well, I'm not creative. So let me give you a little bit of science background. The science says and has determined, my wife gets very upset when I say science has proven, because scientists are very careful never to say we've proven anything. Yeah. Okay. So apparently that's a bad word.
It's just what we know at this point in time.
Right, exactly. So science has taught us that every human being is born with a set amount of creativity. Okay. So it's not so much more or less, it's a set amount. Now imagine kind of like a scale, two parallel scales. So you've got a scale and I've got a scale. One of us may be higher on the scale when we're born than the other one. That's possible.
Right.
But both of us have the ability throughout our lives to not only climb the scale, to essentially be more creative, but also to expand our bucket of creativity.
Right.
So everybody's got it. But I think, one of the things for me, creativity in many ways, it's a survival instinct. And I don't mean like I have to be creating something or I'm going to die kind of mentality. I just mean, well, I'm going to steal it. I'm going to steal it from Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs gave an incredibly iconic graduation speech at Stanford University, and he talked about the idea of connecting the dots. And that's really what I think creativity is. My definition, it's solving problems, right? Because even as photographers, we're a bit of an odd bunch. I would argue that we're actually kind of rather stupid in many ways. And what I mean by that is we spend thousands of dollars on camera gear. And the minute we've done that, or the minute we've effectively started down that path, we develop, it's kind of like this medical malady of sorts. I like to call it epicopathy. It's not a real word, so I get credit for this word. Epicopathy is what happens when a photographer has spent all this money and then they are no longer happy with an image, a photograph that is not truly epic. So they will choose to see something and have that gut response of, oh, I should take a picture. But then immediately have another response that says, but wait, I don't have the right lens. Or, the light's not quite right. Or, I can't get close enough. And then they don't take the picture.
Oh, so man, I am so guilty of that.
They won't shoot it. Oh, we're all guilty of it, Bruce, right? So basically, though, what are we doing? We're essentially choosing to create problems. So really, creativity it's problem solving. I've seen something.
Yeah.
I've got this epic concept or image or idea in my head based on that. But now I've got to solve the problem. How do I make it look epic?
Yeah.
So, for me, it is. I see it as kind of a survival instinct. Creativity is, it's just getting from one point to the next. I mean, the Steve Jobs analogy, I think, is one of the best analogies I've ever heard for the idea of being creative. And I think it's fair to say that people who practice creativity, so again, it's not about being some kind of God-given gift. It's about practicing. It's about deliberately choosing to try and use creative thinking and to try and look at the world creatively. People who choose that as a habit and make that a habit, they do tend to see things that other people don't see. It's not so much a matter that comes natural to them, because you could be a person that indeed is like, you're a little out there and you do see the world really different, but you're not necessarily going to meet your creative potential until you make it a habit to put that mindset to use. So it really is. I mean, it's like anything else, right? The more you practice it, the better you get at it.
Yeah.
And so for me, I do. Creativity it's a habit, it's a lifestyle, it's a mindset. And I'm not the greatest photographer. I learned that when I was a kid. I learned that I never would be. My biggest success is the fact that, let's see, how old am I now? I've had a camera for 49 years. Yeah. My entire life, I have had a camera. And I've paid my bills with my cameras, and I'm still doing that. And that's my success.
I'd like to break into the podcast briefly to mention that we now have a Patreon account. If you get any value at all from our photographic giggle fest each week, we'd really appreciate it if you could spare a couple of bucks a month just to help keep the servers running. The link will be in the show notes. Much appreciated. Now, back to the podcast. Okay, questions without notice. What makes you claim to not being a great photographer?
Oh, because I could, it's not, I'm not trying to be modest. I'm being very practical. So to give you the background on that statement though, I had a mentor when I was in high school who realized that I was a little too big for my britches. I was I was a teenager, so cut me a little slack, okay?
Sure.
But I was cocky. I was pretty good. I had won a bunch of awards. In my mind, I was like the world's greatest photographer when I was like 17 years old.
Right.
Like any teenager would be. And this guy really kind of took me apart and then let me sweat about it for a few days. And, I didn't have the guts to bring it back up again. And I was devastated. And finally, he reached out to me and he's like, so, you given up yet? And I'm like, well, I don't know really what I'm doing. And he's, and then he kind of put the pieces back together to make me realize. And it wasn't just a kind of take my knees out from under me thing. He broke it down. He went through my work with me and showed me other photographers' work and showed me where I wasn't meeting the mark. And he was right. So it was very, he was a little harsh, but his response was very constructive. And I do. I mean, even today, I could go through list after list after list of photographers whose work that I've seen. And, I just think to myself, God, I hate them just a little bit because I could never see the world the way they see the world. I've been doing this all these years. And one thing about creativity, too, at least I find, and there's also some science behind this, the older we get, it does become a bit more of a challenge to be creative.
Oh, of course.
On one hand, we learn more tools and we learn more tricks, which that is definitely very helpful. But on the other hand, there's this human thing of kind of been there, done that, seen it.
Yeah.
So, if you are truly dedicated to being creative, it becomes more of a challenge to do things that you've never seen before, to do things that are different, that are truly unique.
Yeah.
And so again, that's where I go back to, you build a habit around it. So for me, I say it not, to get somebody to pat me in the back and say, oh, no, you're great. I'm very proud of my work. My work is very detail oriented. It's good quality. But I can go, one photographer, and I am honored to frequently be mentioned in the same sentence, but this young woman is she's light years beyond where I would ever be capable of, and that's Lindsay Adler. People will frequently say, oh, you do stuff kind of like Lindsay Adler does. And I'm like, she's way beyond me, just way beyond me. And
I love her work and I follow her on Instagram, but I'd put you above her.
Really?
Yeah, I would.
God, I knew I liked you, Bruce. Thank you.
Seriously, I think your mastery of light is better than hers, but then maybe that's just subjective. Maybe,
And well, let's face it. All photography, all creative output. There's certainly a subjective.
It is subjective, yeah.
But I think, part of what I walked away from that dressing down that I got from that mentor was, just kind of be careful about how you perceive yourself. And you've heard me talk about before, always remember your why. And it was really kind of just remember why you use the camera and why you pick up the camera in the first place and make that your focus.
Yeah.
Even, being an ambassador for a company like Olympus and having the opportunity to travel and teach and do all these presentations. Hell yes, it's awesome for the ego. I'm not going to lie. I'd be lying if I said otherwise. But at the end of the day, it's also, I've got to remember, why am I a photographer still? What is it about photography? And the mission statement that you hear me say all the time, you hear it in every one of my videos. I say it in the beginning of Talk Chat. It's on my website, helping photographers understand the hows and whys behind making consistently great photographs.
Yeah.
I stumbled on that after one of my very early Talk Chats. And part of the reason why I say it every time I get in front of a camera and every time I do my live show is as a reminder to me so that everything I'm talking about, everything I'm producing, all the content I'm generating, all the classes I'm teaching, it holds me accountable to that mission. So that I'm not out there making a video saying, well, this lens is better than that lens. There's plenty of people doing that already, and good for them. It's good that we have people that do that. But I have my lane, and my lane in part comes because I've been at this for so long. I've got a lot of experiences that I can share and hopefully help people avoid some of the pitfalls that I stumbled into and kind of show them a path because at the end of the day, they still have to go pick up the camera and gain the experience. You can watch all the YouTube videos in the world. You're not going to be a good photographer.
Correct.
So my hope is, to be able to kind of take my experience and help people make sense of all the information that's out there so that they're able to get closer to their goals quicker.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. It's, I don't know where I'm going from that.
I was going to say, are you going to go back to this like incredibly depressing year that we had, or what?
Look, for me, I haven't picked up the camera a whole lot. I think the most use my camera got this year was when Kath and I went on our holiday, which got massively curtailed. What was meant to be, 3 weeks in Croatia ended up being 10 days road trip around New South Wales because we couldn't leave the state.
Right.
So, I took a lot of photos on that 10-day trip, but yeah, beyond that, I've not had a lot of opportunities to get the camera out. So yeah, it's certainly been an interesting year, that's for sure.
It has for sure. I mean, I haven't photographed a model, like working with a makeup artist and a model. I haven't done that since the first week in March when I was in Florida.
Yeah.
I can honestly say, if I were to average it out a little bit, there's probably a day that I miss here or there, but I usually manage to shoot something every single day.
Yeah, nice.
But I'm not kidding. It could literally be, I'm walking the dogs around the block and it's a rainy day and there's an interesting leaf with water droplets, laying there, and I'm going to make kind of an abstract image of it. It is a discipline. It's a matter of, okay, well, I'm not shooting the kinds of things that I like to shoot. So it's kind of like that whole creative process is kind of on hiatus right now. But I have a discipline about being creative and looking for things that are different and unique and different ways to do it. And just like that leaf sitting on the ground, that picture's been done 1,000,000 times over. I've done that picture probably 1,000 times with a phone or whatever. But hey, it looks interesting. So what could I do today that I've never done before?
Yeah.
And how can I change it? So it's kind of the create a problem, solve a problem. And it's just a matter of keeping that thought process sharp and alive. And I don't know that I'll ever actually be able to shut that off because I kind of get too bored with things if I'm not just looking at things differently.
Yeah. Yeah, well, like I said, when I heard this girl, reading from her memoir and this statement that creativity isn't something we choose to do, it's something we have to do. I just thought, absolutely resonated with me, definitely.
Oh yeah, I mean, without it, life is boring.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think a part of it, a part of the having to be creative, it comes from having a passion for something. And I've always kind of, worked with a philosophy. If I can do things that I'm passionate about, then the reality is I'm going to work harder than most people. But the other reality is it's not going to feel like work. It's not
exactly.
And I can honestly say probably my biggest personal accomplishment is that I've gotten through my life without ever really having a job.
Yeah.
I've always loved what I do.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I have my bad days. I have assignments or whatever that it's kind of like, oh, I can't believe I've got to do this. Yeah, sure, we all have those.
Yeah.
But the net sum of it all, I love what I do. And I can't get enough of it. Still can't get enough of it.
Are you familiar with the writer Mark Manson? The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck?
No. Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
I have not read that. I've seen that. Yes.
It's a great book. And the way I got introduced to Mark Manson was because a friend on Facebook posted a link to an article that he had read. This was before his book came out. And I clicked on the link and I may be paraphrasing the title, but it was 7 questions to help you find your life's purpose. And one of those questions was, what makes you forget to eat and poop? And and it was, and he then expanded on that and said, if you can find that thing that makes you forget to eat and poop, then
there you go.
That is the thing that you want to be focusing on, because as you've just said, if you can make that your life's vocation, then it will never feel like work, because you get so engrossed in it, you love it so much that, time just flies by. And that absolutely resonated with me as well. So.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, absolutely. If you can have fun doing what you're doing, it's never going to feel like work. That's kind of the beauty of it. And then, given that this is a creative endeavor, and especially with the work I do now, the idea that I can have an idea and, take that idea from my head and put the pieces together in front of a camera and essentially create it and bring it to life. And then even take that idea further by going to Photoshop and maybe using several images to bring it together. That's just the idea that the creative ability that we have right now, just in terms of the tools that are available, it's amazing. I mean, let's face it, if we can think it, we can create it. Yeah. Which is incredible. And so it even, as the technology has evolved throughout my life, with photography, there are a lot of people of my generation and older that they don't like change. They're afraid of the technology. They're not comfortable with technology, and they kind of complain about it. Fortunately, I'm not a normal baby boomer. I am of the mentality that I love the change. I love the technology. I love learning new things, because in the course of learning those new things, all of that's expanding my potential in terms of what I can create and what I can dream and imagine. So yeah, I love that. I just think that the technology we have is just, and where it's going is incredible.
It's a great time to be a creator. There's no doubt about it.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And it'll be even better when we can move freely.
Yeah. So what are your plans for Christmas, Joe?
Well, unfortunately, we've decided, my wife is immunocompromised, so we've been extremely careful throughout all of this. And, I have 2 young grandsons, and they're not that far away. So I'm sure we Zoom with them multiple times a week. So we see them a lot. And my son and daughter-in-law, they've even gotten smart enough now. The oldest grandson is 6, and they've figured out that if they actually hand him the phone, we become babysitters, because he will then take us throughout the house for an hour nonstop. And so that's kind of a running joke right now, because they thought that we didn't really realize that's what was happening. But he moves around enough that, there were a couple times I realized, like, they're cleaning. Yeah. He's cooking. Like, we're babysitting. But it's great. So we at least still have a really good connection, and we, get to spend time with them. But for the holidays, we're pretty much going to stay hunkered down at home. For the first time in my life, I've gotten to the point where I actually really look forward to weekends and not working. So I have, like, ever since it started, I've been crushing it throughout the week, developing content and developing, new presentations and teaching. So we get to the weekend, and, we've been watching a lot of movies and just kind of chilling. And I've gained a couple pounds. That's going to have to get worked on. But, so we're kind of the mindset, there's no sense in emotionally fighting this. Yeah. I'd much rather get to the other side and be able to look back on it, as opposed to being stupid now and not getting through it. So, and here in the States, it's worse now than it's been since the beginning. Things are insane right now. A lot of lockdowns going back into place. So yeah, we're just going to hang tight and, get to the other side.
Good to hear, mate. Well, I wish you well and stay safe.
Well, thank you, sir. Yeah. And I hope you guys, at least you guys get to move around a little bit, but have a wonderful holiday. So I guess I should ask, when do we start again? Like, what is the protocol for the Australian holiday with a podcast here?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I did speak with Glenn via text this week, and he said,
how's everything going for him?
He said, "Hey mate, probably not back this week, but should be right for next week." And I said, "Don't bother."
Okay.
I said, "Joe and I are going to record the last episode for the year this weekend." I said, "So we'll pick it up next year." So. But he's kind of, working through it, going through probate at the moment, which is, I'm not sure if you have the same process in America, but it's sort of the legal technicalities of wrapping up the estate of someone deceased and, transferring of ownership of stuff. And so he's got all that to contend with, and obviously not the best time of year to be having to face all of that sort of stuff. So.
Yeah. No, that's for sure. Yeah.
But
cool. Well, good. I'm glad it's at least wrapping up for him. Very good.
Yeah. So, but we definitely need to get you on more often. It's great to have a chat with you and to get your insights.
Say the word.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, anytime.
All right, mate. Well, you have a good Christmas and a happy New Year.
Thank you, sir. Same to you. And hopefully we'll talk again soon.
Definitely.
Okay?
Definitely.
All right, Bruce.
See ya.
Take care.
Shutters Inc.
Another AudioToYou.com quality podcast.
For questions, comments, and feedback, email theboys@shuttersincpodcast.com.